So folks, I'm back again with BBD, and like I expected, some of my posts have brought up the same narrative back again, but the US is untrustworthy. Let's see what it did in the 50s, what it did in the 60s. Hey, let's go back to the 40s. Look at what it did and brought the world back to sanity as far as the Nazis were concerned and a rampaging Japan. Similarly, if you look at Korea, which people seem to keep bringing it up, Korea, hey, South Korea is a thriving nation, and thanks to the United States. Look at Japan. Japan's a thriving nation thanks to the United States and the coverage they got. Vietnam, we're talking about Vietnam. Okay, fine. But yeah, hey, that entire purge or the angst was domestic to the United States. It didn't hurt anybody else. They in fact forced the exit. But look at Vietnam now. They got they've forgiven the United States. They're back in place. So hey, what are we sitting here and talking about this, about Japan and Korea and all this? But hey, stay focused, folks. Stay focused. What's the biggest thing that's happened? US, UK, Australia launched defense alliance to counter China. US, UK, Australia agree on new Indo-Pacific pact. China fumes, it's going to. Days before Quad, Australia, US, UK join hands to counter China. The way Indian Express has put it out there, right? That days before Quad, what it's trying to do is again build doubts. Maybe it's trying to send a message that maybe the Quad has been downgraded. That's not the case. This actually, folks, it reinforces the Quad, as Indrani Bagchi writes. Australia, UK, US pact could be good news for India. It says, the security trilateral will be a huge message to China. Most important, it will add to the global efforts to balance China in this region. It will augment the defenses capabilities of Australia, which graduated to become one of India's closest strategic partners in the Indo-Pacific. Second, the new trilateral is likely to augment capabilities of the Quad, of which both US and Australia are members. AK, US will see Australia accessing nuclear submarines for the first time, amping up the defense quotient in the Indo-Pacific. The wrinkles in the stems, so the only wrinkle that stems is France, but that's commercial. Two of India's biggest partners in the Indo-Pacific, France has signed a $40 billion. So they're the only ones screaming. Like France says, sinking its deal with OS, a Trump-like move. Hey, but Blinken says Paris is a vital partner, Indo-Pacific Blinken. Now, what is important? This brings the United Kingdom into a space in Indo-Pacific, and they've tied up with Australia and the United States to counter, namely China. Why India is not involved? Though I personally think India should also jump into it to get this nuclear technology, right, which we are struggling with, right? But India is not. It's kept out of this loop essentially because India continues to pretend that Indo-Pacific is not about China, right? The day India dumps that, India will make one of the biggest strategic possibly moves that there is. And that's the important one. Like for example here, India Air Force to bolster its fighter jet with purchase of 24 second-hand Mirages. I think this is a dimwit idea. What we should be, folks, is leasing these aircraft from the United States, getting American platforms here, folks. And where's strategic in Indo-Pacific? European Union unveils Indo-Pacific strategy. India maintains silence as China fumes over AUK use. In China, that's funny. India should, actually has to give up its silence. But hey, Australia okays increased US air deployments. And why this worry about what is important here, folks? This is, I think, one of the most strategically important moves that's been made to show that the United States is there in the Pacific to stay in the long run. It is going to defend Taiwan, it's going to defend Japan, and it's going to defend that particular area with whatever it has, folks. And India is on the right side. Cheers. So folks, people are obviously worried about what's happening in Afghanistan. The United States has decided as a policy that, it's walking away from the Middle East altogether, right? The boots have left the grounds everywhere, and as you will see, militants may use chaos to infiltrate US, EU says. No, that's a fear that we all have to worry about, including in India. Pakistan continues to make a fool of itself. Pakistan PM calls Haqqani network and Afghan Pashtun tribe draws flag. It's unbelievable, right? Friction among Taliban pragmatists, hardliners intensifies. Baradar appears on Afghan national TV to deny rumors that he was killed. So this is not settling down, right? And that's advantage India. Voice of the Panjshir, as Ashok K. Mehta, right? This is the important part. It was not easy taking Panjshir and required intervention by Pakistan's special forces and air force at a time when it became imperative to show that the Taliban had full territorial control and there was no leadership divide. And that's why Iran erupted. And that was the important part to remember, right? And this is the greatest game, the Indo-Pacific, that's coming up, folks. So the great game, what is that? Pramit Pal Chaudhary from the United States. While India has to fashion its own guard northwest policy, the US exit from Kabul is a net strategic negative for China. He says what some scholars are dubbing the Biden doctrine already has a number of foundational positions. The US is facing an existential threat in the form of a China that is much more challenging than the erstwhile Soviet Union. Beijing is also fusing its autocratic polity with digital technology to create a genuine alternative to democracy. Okay. The real test of the Biden administration's foreign policy as far as India is concerned should be whether the US doubles down on the Indo-Pacific. The announcement of AUKUS is evidence that Afghan exit will not stop the US investing strategic capital in the Indo-Pacific. The flow of weapons to Taiwan, investments to close the China missile gap, and Quad evolution are the other metrics that US allies in Eastern Asia are watching. US reliability has taken a knock. US competency is in tatters, but an unfolding US grand strategy has become clearer and more credible, and that is where India's interest lies. This is all for all the no's. See what's happening in the Middle East, right? US pulls missile defenses in South Arabia. While that's happening, folks, you have Saudi minister to visit India this week to hold Afghan talks. So India is putting itself in play, right? Afghan crisis focus of Saudi minister's visit. And what we're doing with Dubai, India to have key strategic pavilion at Dubai Expo 2020, says US. And here what has happened in the Middle East, I don't know whether how many of you remember, I think there was a cold kind of war between Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, especially Abu Dhabi. So Mahesh Sachdev writes, West Asia, the parable of two Muhammads and what it means for India. He says the blink and you may have missed a meeting on July 19th in Riyadh between Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed of Abu Dhabi. Was an event as banal as it was profound, depending upon where one looked. He says India has growing bilateral ties with both Saudi Arabia and UAE. One is third and fourth largest trading partners among our top 5 oil suppliers. Taken together in 1920, they accounted for 90 billion of trade and nearly 24 billion in remittances for India from our 5 million strong diaspora. They have also emerged as major investors in India, often acting in concert, particularly in the oil sector. Their coming together can only help our attempts to leverage the growing economic ties with these two neighbors in the post-COVID-19 area. And this, after the Abrahamic Accords, is even better. India's statement as UNGA hints at tilt towards Israel. And there is a business technology threesome developing between Dubai, Israel and India, which is important, folks. Watch this space. Pakistan's gotten totally left out and they're going to rue this day that they jumped in bed with Turkey. Cheers. So folks, like I mentioned yesterday, in Central Asia, Tajikistan is one of the most threatened nations after what the takeover by Taliban. There is Tajikistan and then there is Iran, right? So let's see what India is up to. And this is an important message that's happening. In a message to Taliban, Tajikistan honors Ahmad Shah Massoud. So they've come out in the open about that. Tajikistan sends stern message to Taliban on minorities in government, and so did Iran. So here's what we have. Jaishankar holds talks with Tajik president to meet Russian-Iranian counterparts. Both are problematic now. Iranian foreign minister likely to visit India soon for Afghan talks. So folks, the other person who's getting really concerned is Russia, because I think it's been outplayed by Pakistan and it's been outplayed by China. And China has also gotten duped by Pakistan, because I don't think anybody really wanted. I mean, if you remember, both these countries were saying they don't want a complete Taliban government, they want an inclusive government. They got duped. So they got to come back to us. And as it is, see, look what is happening here. Modi will partner Moscow to develop Russian Far East. And then you have Puri says, Puri's Vladivostok visit boosts Indo-Russian energy trade. But let me just tell you this important part. Vladivostok is a disputed territory with China. China is going to unleash this sometime in the future. And Russia is worried, and that's why the presence of India becomes very important with them. And now finally they're sharing security with us after keeping us out of it for so much time. India and Russia decide to upgrade co-op between intel security bodies to deter Afghanistan terror group. Hey, if they'd done it only earlier, right? But just remember, people talk about unreliability of America. Russia is the most unreliable partner, folks. It has let India down many times, and most importantly, it loses interest once the Americans get out, and that's exactly what's happening in Syria. Syria clash dims Russia ambition in Middle East. So basically, the United States pulled out, so did Russia. Afghanistan, US pulled out, Russia has lost interest, right? That's why they've got India involved, right? But India continues to make its move, and here's another big economic move. India's UPI Singapore pay now to be linked by July 2022, says RBI. This is a very critical move for India to kind of build its bridges and its tentacles into Southeast Asia. And the other important prize here is Indonesia. India must work with the United States for that. Cheers. So for folks, those who keep thinking, don't trust the Americans, and how the same tribe had come out during the initial stages of India's terrorist with the second wave, and everybody kept saying, see, US, you cannot trust. But here, watch this, right? On COVID, how Delhi turned the wheels in DC. India is expected to land the largest chunk of vaccines donated by the United States. According to the allocation plan announced by President Joe Biden, it has already received upwards of 500 million in supplies and relief from US government and the private sector, and also won the crucial backing of the Biden administration for its joint proposal with South Africa for a temporary waiver of patents to COVID-19 vaccines. And that's what you call a dependable ally, folks, not China. What do we have here? Can the Quad meet give anchor? It says, apart from furthering the Quad promises on vaccines delivery, new technologies and climate change initiatives, they will discuss Afghanistan, Pakistan and China. Okay, and there lies the main meat. He says, any rationalization of the stark reality would be delusional. Biden has a special responsibility given the reputational damage he has suffered from the shambolic withdrawal. Even China and Russia are adjusting their enthusiastic positions after the Taliban inclusive government was revealed. So the United States is in play. It's suffered some like temporary visual letdowns, but I think it can overcome. It always does. US companies must focus on forming JV's tech transfer, says Rajnath, another important part. And finally, we are letting loose of our old dependability issue. Indo-US cooperation will boost economic dynamism. Absolutely will. Quad to focus on vaccine supply in Indo-Pacific region. China's vaccine inroads in ASEAN necessitates momentum to a plan. This is the important part, and I've seen this on the ground in Vietnam. They're resisting Chinese vaccine, but they need an option, right? India needs to step in. India-US climate talks, and this is the most important consequential investment that's going to happen to India, right? CAFMD has three parts. First, the US and India would develop proposals to curb emissions. The second is finance mobilization, focusing on attracting capital and green technologies for India. And third is climate adaptation and resilience. 6 of the largest banks in the US will invest a minimum of 4.16 trillion in the next 10 years to make the transition happen. CAFMD is part of the Indo-US Climate and Clean Energy Agenda 2030 partnership, reached in April by Prime Minister Modi and Biden. And this, folks, is a game changer for India. Just like ASEAN had it during the times when the off-sighting happened, this is a game changer. To decarbonize economies, India and US launch platform. The India story is back, but it needs courage and perseverance. And I'm thinking it's getting the courage now, says Frank Islam. India-US expand energy partnership. This is Hardeep Puri. This is another important part, folks. And to remember this, textile apparel orders, especially from US power India exports. So it tells you how important the United States market is, because exports, as Swaminathan Raya writes, so is this the 7% solution? He says one should be enthused by the 20% GDP, but the good news is exports. Without exports, we are not going to get to the 7% solution. India raises concerns over pro-Khalistani groups in the US. This is going to be obviously a pain in our side, but what's happening is getting as far as Guam. Navy warships reach Guam from Malabar exercise. Send the message. But now we need to, in my opinion, tie the knot in terms of this this latest initiative that's been launched for nuclear submarines development in Australia. India needs to get there. Believe me, it needs to get there. It's as important as signing the nuclear deal, folks. Cheers and Jai Hind.